In today's episode, we're gonna dive into the US mobile robots scene. Together with my special guest, I'm gonna discuss topics like mass robotics versus VDA 5050, like the development of the mobile robots market in the US, as well as humanoid usage in the States. So stay with us and enjoy.
Automation Awakenings, your weekly dose of best practices for logistics automation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast with myself, Matthias Koblitz, and a very exciting guest in our virtual studio. He is the co-founder and president of Mass Robotics, and he's also the founder and chairman of Vecna Robotics. Additionally, he's considered to be one of the top robotic voices in the US. Welcome to the show, Daniel Theobald.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Daniel, before the episodes, I went through your LinkedIn profile to learn more about you and your experiences. And it seems as if you are a real robotic guy. Could you tell our listeners on where all of this started and how you got into this exciting topic?
You know, it's kind of funny. I grew up I was born in San Jose, California, sort of the heart of Silicon Valley before it was even called Silicon Valley. And
Okay.
I was very fortunate. You know, I did not realize what a special place this was for technology at the time. And I just had access to, technology in a way that was unique. I went to one of the first elementary schools in the entire world that had a computer lab.
Wow.
We had Commodore PET computers and Apple Ones. Not many people
Wow.
ever used an Apple One.
Yeah.
I just was fascinated with the potential to use technology to, improve life for people. And I used to ride my bicycle, my 10-speed, as we used to call them, around the valley, and there were all these tech parks starting to pop up everywhere. When I was first here, it was just, it was farms and fields everywhere as far as you can see. And these tech parks started to pop up everywhere. And I used to ride my 10-speed around, and I'd dumpster dive. I'd go to the dumpsters to try and find parts for my electronics projects, for my robotics projects. And just loved seeing what I could do. I'd take toy robotic arms and I'd hook them up to my Apple II Plus at that point that I had built. And I think I just really believed that technology was going to change the way we lived. And here we are, few decades later. And the difference in daily life due to technology is just astounding. And it's only getting faster and faster.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, we also used to talk about that with my friends, and I remember I had like these cassettes when I was a kid, like listening stories on my Walkman, and now it's all in the cloud and it's all accessible. And we also talk a lot about humanoids and AI in our podcast. So it's such a rapid development in the last 35 years. It's insane.
Well, it's just going to get faster and faster. Of course, the thing we need to do is, more than anything, is learn how to adapt more quickly to changes. It used to be, I don't know if you've ever looked at this graph of technology over human history, but it's basically flat for, centuries and centuries and centuries, and then it just goes exponential. And we're still going exponential, right? I mean, the rate at which technology, take robotics for an example, the rate at which robotic technology is advancing right now is 10x what it was a couple of years ago even. And, it's all, of course, because better technology allows us to create technology faster. And so you've got this, this multiplying effect. But yeah, it's really crazy. And of course, what all that means is it's really important that we are very thoughtful about what we do with technology in the future to actually make life better for people on the earth, not worse.
Yeah, absolutely. How about your your degree, your studies. I saw you also had the chance to study at one of the finest universities on planet, probably. Did that also influence in your way?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because when I was growing up, there wasn't a big, or I didn't have a big focus on, going to the university. Um,
Yeah.
I was just kind of doing what I was doing out of love and passion. And after graduating high school, I did really well. I was very fortunate. I got chosen to represent the entire state of California as the top computer science student at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. At the time, I got
Wow.
to spend some time with Edward Teller, very controversial figure, obviously, but that experience actually had me think about, as engineers, the decisions we make will have a profound effect on humanity.
Mm.
And let's think about not just, not just feeling like technology is inevitable and we have to just take that next step, but being very thoughtful as engineers in what we're doing. And,
Yep.
to the extent that we can, make sure that we are doing good things. But in any event, I had that experience, and then I wasn't really planning on going to college, honestly. I just was enjoying so much working on
Mm.
uh, technology and building robots and stuff like that. But my father pulled me aside one day and he said, "Hey, maybe you should just think about applying somewhere." And so I'm like, "Oh, I don't really know." He said, "Yeah, just do me a favor and just apply to one school." So a few days later, I was at my next door neighbor's house and he pulled out this brochure and he said, "Oh, look, MIT, this is supposedly the best engineering school on the planet." And he looked at me
Mm.
and he said, "But you could never get in there." And and I'm like,
Mm.
"Okay, well, a
Challenge
couple,
accepted.
well, exactly." But it wasn't even like something that conscious, because a few days later, my dad asked me again. He said, "So have you decided? Are you going to apply
Mm.
anywhere?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I don't know." And of course, I was supposed to have looked into schools. The only one I knew about, of course, was Stanford because I lived right there, and we had visited Stanford campus, and I wasn't really impressed, which is funny because I didn't even realize what a good school Stanford was at the time.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to apply to MIT, Dad." And so I applied to MIT and got very, very lucky that I got in. So it all kind of worked out. But yeah, MIT was an amazing experience, and it was funny that when I first got to campus, I got there a little bit early because I needed to get a job. Didn't come
Yeah.
from an affluent family, so I had to get onto campus and see if I could find a job to pay for my education. And I ended up spending the first night sleeping in a cot in the campus police station because the dorms weren't ready. And I had never
Okay.
flown before. I had never left California. I mean, these
Yeah.
were like crazy experiences for me, and this was as a young person. And then the very next day, the first issue of the school paper came out, the tech, and it said, said, "Freshman, welcome to hell." Whole half page ad, and I'm like, okay, I
Hmm.
guess I guess I've really gotten myself into something here.
Yeah.
But the thing was, the experience wasn't so much about the school. It wasn't so much about the lectures and all of that. It was really about the people that I
Okay.
got to go to
Mm.
school with, right? In some sense, MIT is a great place, but in some sense, they don't have to really compete on the quality of education.
Mm.
They compete on the reputation of being the best. So really talented people go there, and then you keep company with really talented people, and that's the thing that provides the most value.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Also got the chance to spend a semester abroad at the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore, so one of the finest business schools in India. And the courses were great, but the people were even greater. And it
Yeah,
was just amazing to stay around these people, to yeah, to collect inspiration from them. And I totally understand what you mean by saying that the MIT was simply a great bunch of people that gave you a
yeah,
lot of inspiration for what you do now, I guess.
yeah. A lot of
And
inspiration. It really helped to establish my thinking around the fact that people are what matters at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
technology is created and exists to serve people, and we can't lose sight of that.
Perfect. This is a great bridge to the next topic, Daniel, because I feel you are very much about the fact of like bringing technology, people together in a responsible way to create something that is helping everyone and is improving quality of life in general. Was that one of the guiding ideas, maybe the fuel to found the Mass Robotics initiative?
Yeah, absolutely, and on a number of levels. Um, when I was a young entrepreneur struggling to make my company successful, robotics is hot right now, and there's, you know, hundreds of new startups, it seems like, every week. But back then, doing a robotics startup was very, very hard. There was no ROS. The tools didn't exist. You had to build
Yep.
all of your stuff from scratch. And, after fighting my way through that, I thought, we've kind of figured a lot of this stuff out. It would be great if we could share it and help other young roboticists, other young companies, have a leg up, not have to reinvent the wheel again, so to speak. So that was a lot of the idea behind Mass Robotics is let's help the robotics industry move forward more quickly, because everybody shouldn't have to start from scratch. Let's pull together the expertise on actuators and on sensors and on algorithms and compute, because, unlike most other companies, robotics has a little bit of everything. Right, you got to do the electronics right. You got to do the software right. You got to do the mechanical stuff right. The sensing, the compute, the AI, the human-robot interaction, the safety. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's like the culmination or the pinnacle of all engineering combined, and not easy, especially for a startup that doesn't have access to a lot of resources. So at Mass Robotics, we're trying to create a smoother glide path for these companies to get from idea to market impact. So we provided machine shops, we provided mentoring, we provided access to investors, most importantly, access to real customers so that they could really understand the issues. It's still a big issue, Matthias, that lots of startups, lots of technologists in particular, they're not solving the right problem. They get excited about technology, oftentimes out of university. They're used to using, humanoid or serial manipulators, and they're like, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to go out and, I think I'll do that. And they don't really understand that yet. So I think one of the most important pieces of advice I give to young companies trying to make an impact in robotics is don't start with the robot, start with the problem. Find the
Nice.
problem that needs to be solved, and you have to understand that problem. I'm working on a farming project right now. We're building a farming robot, and through one of my other startups called Rotate 8. And I didn't want to be one of those engineers that was trying to, solve a problem for farmers that I didn't understand. So I made a commitment to myself that I would farm conventionally for at least 5 years before trying to create and sell a product for farmers. And that was time very well spent, because I understand farming 100 times better than I did a few years ago, and
Yeah.
lots of surprises. So, as I'm now looking at what is that product that actually needs to be built, it's completely different than I had conceived of it, before going through that process. It's kind of an automation awakening in a sense.
Here we go. And what I like, my 2 cents on that is that I think people learn best via pain in a way, right?
Yeah.
So my mom also has a big garden, and I used to work there as a kid, and I know the struggles. But let's leave this aside and let's come back to Mass Robotics again, because this is a very, very exciting topic for many of us here in Europe. So we also have a big robotics community here, especially mobile robots are picking up a lot at the moment.
Right.
And what we discuss in on many occasions is basically interoperability of different mobile robots. And I know that you guys at Mass Robotics have also created a standard for that. So could you quickly describe it to our listeners and also explain how it works, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. So being involved with so many different robotic startups and seeing the inevitable future of mobile robots in facilities, it occurred to me a few years ago that we needed to start to think about how these robots were going to interact with each other. Because as the number of robots increase in density in a facility, a warehouse, or a manufacturing facility, of course, you start to get to this situation where you're going to have a lot of robots getting in
Yeah.
each other's way. And that's not going to be efficient. Really, what we would like ultimately is a system where every resource is providing optimal value all the time. But you can't do that if there's not communication and planning between the different systems. So, knowing that there were a lot of different companies out there that weren't necessarily going to be interested in collaborating right off the bat, we tried to take a very lightweight approach. The idea was, let's make sure that every robot vendor out there would understand the value of what we're doing. And so we began this process of bringing in robotic vendors and industry representatives from companies like FedEx and General Motors and other places, and talked about the needs and tried to figure out, in a sense, the 80-20 solution, right? 80% of the value that would only take 20% of the effort or complexity. And we sort of narrowed it down because we didn't want to have a big standards effort that took years and years to work through, because the industry is changing so quickly. We knew we needed to get something out there immediately. And so the whole approach was, let's take an agile approach to standards development. Let's keep it simple. Let's figure out what are the biggest wins and just focus on those. And what we found was that the biggest wins were around very simple sharing of information about where the robot is and where it's going.
Yeah.
And with that little bit of information, you could now, do a really good job optimizing operations in a warehouse. Because, if I've got robots that are delivering pallets from point A to point B, there's not a lot of room to pass a floor cleaning robot in an aisle. And it would be great for me in my planning, in my fleet management system, to understand where the floor cleaning robots are at any point in time, because then I can plan more effectively. And so that was basically the idea. And we created the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard, and now it is being ratified as an ISO standard for robot interoperability. And it basically allows robots to share a common understanding of the facility by establishing some common points in the physical environment so that maps can be coordinated, and then sharing basic information about who am I, how big am I, where am I right now, and where am I going. And that simple information makes is 90%, 80-90% of what you need to be successful in that scenario.
Yeah, that's right. So as you might know, here in Europe, we have the VDA5050 standard, which is going a similar direction from what I hear. The standard is also about orchestrating different mobile robots as individual actors, connecting them to something that is called a master control system, where then all information is gathered to do active traffic management, for example, right? To stop robots just in time, to not let them run into each other and create bottlenecks. Is that also what you guys are trying to do with the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard, or is it more towards a visualization of real-time location?
Yeah, I'd say it's a lighter weight version of that in a sense. The intent is not to command the robots and tell them where to go, as much as sharing information. But I'd point out that these two standards are not incompatible with each other by any stretch. companies that implement VDA 5050 and implement the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard do them both just fine. I think the major difference is that the idea with the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard is we are not deciding who is in control. The idea is that a robot vendor will potentially be not just an AGV that's moving around a manufacturing facility, but it could be a small robot that's doing some other activity, cleaning or taking out the trash, or a mobile manipulator, for example. And that the VDA 5050 system benefits from knowing where those other types of robots are as well and can do a better job planning. So yeah, I don't think it's in any way competitive. And as a matter of fact, we had one of the recent International Standards Organizations meetings in Germany, and we have a tremendous amount of participation from the VDA 5050 community.
Yep.
And so, I think it's really a great international collaboration that we're all working on. So, for large automotive manufacturers, VDA 5050 is absolutely a great standard to implement. I'd say in addition to that, it's always a no-brainer to also implement the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard.
Got it. Do you have this standard already out in the field, Daniel? And if yes, which companies are using it? Are you able to disclose that, or is that something that we cannot talk about?
Well, the truth is I'm not entirely sure how many. There are some that are public, FedEx and others. FedEx a couple of years ago said that they wouldn't buy any robots from companies that didn't implement the Mass Robotics Interoperability Standard. But up until recently, or I'd say up until now, it's been a self-certification process. So we didn't want to have, again, complicated, a lot of red tape, bureaucracy around this. We said, here's the standard, you implement it, you say that you've implemented it, and we're good. I was actually just talking to some groups at some different standards bodies, and we're now moving to the stage where we're going to at least talk about providing certifying organizations, so certifying labs, so that a company can go and actually prove that they meet the now Internet ISO standard for interoperability, and have it work that way. But the part of the thing is it's so easy to implement it. I've had lots of companies come to me and say, I gave the standard to my engineer and they had it working in an afternoon. That's how simple and lightweight it is. So.
Sounds amazing, and I like the lightweight approach either way. So that's great news. But just once again, for me to really understand it, so you provide interoperability, of course, by sharing real-time location data among different mobile robots that are deployed in the same shop floor. But now, how is the traffic management done? So say you have a robot by Vecna, and you have another by Red Viking, and for some reason they meet on the shop floor. Both are connected via Mass Robotics. So what's happening now, and how is the standards supporting in such a situation?
Yeah, so the standard doesn't explicitly deal with traffic management. However, having that information allows the individual fleet managers and whoever the integrator is to do a much better job, if that makes sense, right? So the standard doesn't explicitly say this is how an intersection will work, because quite frankly, I think it's too early. We don't necessarily know the best way to make an intersection work, especially because are we talking humanoids? Are we talking forklifts? Are we talking floor cleaning robots? Are we talking little robots carrying one parcel? There's a lot of research to be done there yet. And our committee just felt like if we try and specify how an intersection could work or should work, that we would get it wrong. So again, we said, but what will be helpful unambiguously is everybody knowing where everybody else is. And so if we get that information out there, people will start to use that information. They'll build algorithms. There'll be research around intersection management. And, and then maybe a future version will address that. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't need to. So we'll see.
Yeah. Understand. That's really cool, actually. So let's stay with the example. Both Vecna and Red Viking are posting the real-time location ID, so to say, using Mass Robotics. And then the Vecna fleet manager can use the Red Viking location data to take its decisions. At the same time, the Red Viking fleet management can take its decisions based on the data provided by Vecna, right?
That's absolutely right. And
Got
it
it.
gives you the ability, because there are custom fields, right? So Vecna and Red Viking or the integrator could say, hey, let's add a message to reserve the intersection, or let's add a message to prioritize traffic. And you could either do it sort of as a push or a pull. You could say, first come, first serve, I reserve the intersection. Or you could say, everybody knows everyone else's priority, and higher priority is yielded to. There are lots of different algorithms or approaches you could take to that. But so we're just providing the tools. We are not telling them how to do it.
Very nice. Cool approach. So we have to take a look at the time, and we are slowly coming to an end, unfortunately. But I want to spend the last 5 minutes to talk the future a little bit with you, Daniel. So you already mentioned humanoids, and of course we are following this also closely, not only in our podcast but also in the robotics community. So what is your take on that? Will we see humanoids working in logistics in the next 2 to 3 years? Or is this still a buzz topic with a lot of open question marks?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of open question marks. I think humanoids are really fascinating. Like many companies, the first robot I built, or one of the first robots I built, was a humanoid at Vecna back in the day. So I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic that we will find some applications that are uniquely suited to humanoids and their value proposition. Certainly, there's a lot of hype right now. It's an investor hype cycle where investors have put crazy amounts of money into humanoid companies. Sadly, most of those investments will not pay off. It's just kind of the way it works. But no doubt that the research is moving things forward in very interesting ways, and there are going to be situations where the humanoid is the right tool. But the humanoid isn't going to replace the forklift, obviously, and many other tools like that. I think in most cases we will continue to find that using the right tool for the job is what is going to provide the most value. Right. In a very high mix situation where what that tool needs to do is going to change drastically throughout the day, then such a versatile tool as a humanoid is potentially going to pay off. Of course, a lot of it comes down to cost, and the cool thing is we see costs on complex robotic devices dropping very, very quickly. We have an exciting new product at Vecna Robotics, actually, which is a lower cost pallet jack. And we're using it in a case picking situation. So we have a product we're just launching called Case Flow. And this is about the onerous job of, a human picker drives a forklift or a pallet jack around, has to jump off, grab a case, put it on their pallet, drive to the next one, jump off. And this is terrible work, and it just breaks people. So our Case Flow solution, really is this great human-robot interaction where it allows the humans to do the part that they're really good at, and it allows a lot of the strain and stress on their body and the burden of the job to be much less. Maybe eventually, you'll be picking those things with different robots, and so you'll have a robot placing it on the pallet jack and the pallet jack driving away. We're certainly already seeing projects like that. But we knew that the part that could be unambiguously solved today was the autonomous pallet jack piece. And it turns out that we have customers like Geodis that have shown that using this tool improved their throughput by 2x. So
amazing.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive. I think just an example of we are nowhere even close to, understanding all the places where robotics are going to be useful and make a difference. I often tell people that there's 3 M's. Anything that moves, anything that's manufactured, anything that needs maintenance, almost certainly these are going to be done by robotics in the future. And if you think about the 3 M's, that basically covers the entire physical economy. So we're just at the very, very tip of this, and there's going to be more than enough opportunity for thousands, hundreds of thousands of robotics companies to be very, very successful, which is part of the reason why I'm always a big fan of let's work together. Competition is important, but if we work together on things like the interoperability standard in pre-competitive collaboration, all of us will do far, far, far better because we start to reduce the risk to customers to buy this technology, right? There's nothing better for me than for someone else to have a very successful robotics project. I shouldn't want my competitor to fail. That doesn't benefit me. What benefits me is people saying, oh, wow, robotics actually works. Let's put out an RFP and, bring
invite
this
some
into
more.
our factory.
Yeah.
That's what benefits everybody.
More. Yeah, it's a very refreshing view and, goes very well with the cliche of the Silicon Valley investor and entrepreneur, so to say. So I think it's a great message also out to our listeners here in Europe to really foster collaboration and we win together. We win together as a community and as also technology in the end, right?
Yeah. Far, far more to be gained by working together than by trying to do it all ourselves. Robotics is a team sport, and we need the full team, the international team working together. And when we do that, there will be more than enough value and wealth created for everyone to be very, very successful.
Daniel, that's amazing closing words. So let's leave it like this. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a guest here in the Automation Awakenings podcast, and hopefully meet you one day here in Europe on one of the big fairs. Maybe you are attending them, so it would be great to connect with you also in person.
Yeah, happy to continue the conversation, and I'll say anyone who is interested or needs help in the area of robotics, please feel free to reach out. I think part of the idea of collaborating and helping each other is don't be afraid to ask for help. And you can reach me on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find.
Perfect. Then, thank you so much.
Thank you.
To you guys listening. Hear you back next Monday for another episode of Automation Awakenings. Take care and goodbye.
This was another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. Visit us at automation-awakenings.com.